Awesome. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Kori Eliaz, and I'm here to talk to you today about my internship experiences at Lockheed Martin. Thank you so much for making the time to join this call, and I'm really excited to share with you. So here's a little bit about me. Next slide, please. So I'm a BS electrical engineering candidate at Colorado State University. I'm in my third year, so my junior year, and I'm actually a transfer student. So I started my college education back in California at community college. My interests lie in RF for deep space communications, and that really is something that I realized just having worked in the industry for these past few years, as well as doing extracurriculars. So you definitely get a great sense of what you're actually interested in by taking these internships, which I'll explain a little more later. I'm also on the team that won one of NASA L-Space NIPWE competitions, which is a free competition open to all US college students, where you'll basically go through the NASA taxonomy and look for pain points in the aerospace industry, come up with a 7-page proposal for a novel idea, and that will get reviewed by NASA Marshall Space Flight Center. So our team um, participated in this competition in 2019, and our technology was a lunar dust mitigation technology that was chosen for the $10,000 grant. And we're currently prototyping our device at the CSU Powerhouse. So that's one of the biggest things I think that really got me to where I am, and is one of the big reasons why I think that internships are more attainable, is by participating in these free extracurriculars. I'm also an undergraduate student researcher. I am an intern ambassador for Lockheed Martin, which is basically a part-time job that I take on over the school year, just helping HR do outreach at my school and other schools to try to get more interns involved with the company. I'm a NASA Lucy mission ambassador, so I spread the word about our Lucy mission that I've worked on at Lockheed Martin, and I am the chapter president of the SEDS chapter at CSU, which, if you haven't heard of that, is the Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, which is a fantastic international organization, and there's probably a chapter at your school. So if you're interested in working for a company like Lockheed Martin, I would definitely suggest to reach out to them and get involved. Next slide, please. So here's just a little bit about Lockheed Martin. It's a global security and aerospace company currently employing over 100,000 people worldwide. And the company is very broad. We have several business areas. Obviously, I work in space. That's my biggest passion. So the space business area has over 10,000 employees and is responsible for any project that has to do with deep space exploration or the manned missions to the moon and Mars, as well as all of the Mars rovers. A cool fun fact about Lockheed Martin is that we have been a part of, an instrumental part of every single Mars rover that has been sent. So we just know the heat shield and all of the EDL and every single phase of that, just backwards and forwards. We have 375 plus facilities around the world, and our customer base is largely government organizations like NASA, the Air Force, the Navy. So we work very closely with our government, but it is not the same as actually working for the government, since we actually just pick up contracts. We bid on contracts that the government puts out, and so we are still a private organization, which means a little bit more stability in terms of your career. So this is just a map of the different areas that are involved with the space business area, which is where I work. So we have locations everywhere across the US, but mostly the headquarters of space is in Denver, Colorado, where I live in Fort Collins, Colorado. And we also have other locations sprinkled throughout Colorado, specifically in Colorado Springs and Boulder. And then the second largest site for Lockheed Martin Space is in California in the Bay Area, so Palo Alto and Sunnyvale. And we also have several locations over in Pennsylvania and in Florida. So it's very diverse, and we get to work with a lot of different people, and it's a really fantastic place to work. So next slide, please. So here's a little backstory about how I got to LM specifically. I participated in any kind of extracurricular I could get my hands on that had anything to do with aerospace. So like I said, I started my college education in community college. And so in 2018, I was taking general classes for science and math and engineering. And I wasn't really sure exactly what field I wanted to go into, but I heard about the NCAS program, which is the NASA Community College Aerospace Scholars Program. And I have links to all these programs at the end of this slide deck. So if you're curious about any of that, that will be provided. But it's just a free program that's open to community college students across the country, and you basically participate in a 5-week online course where you're trained in terms of just all the different departments that NASA has. You know, we learned about heliophysics, and then we learned about the people who worked on the Mars rover. So we learned like about JPL, and we learned about aeronautics, and then the climate science that NASA does. And at the end of those 5 weeks, you'll be much more well versed in what NASA actually does and how the taxpayer money is applied in terms of this research. And then you'll put together a report with differing topics. The one I wrote was about hypothetical rover that I wanted to send to Mars to perform greenhouse activities and botany experiments. So based on the grade that you get from that, from the advisors for NCAS, you can be selected to go to a NASA center and actually participate in a 4 to 5 day on-site robotics challenge where we work with Lego Mindstorms to go onto a simulated Mars platform and pick up rocks and learn how to use the different sensors that come in that kit, as well as get exposed to the different opportunities available at NASA centers for careers, and also to NASA speakers. So it's a fantastic opportunity. Again, completely free. The only thing you have to pay for is a $30 fee if you're selected to go to a NASA center, but otherwise completely free, and just really propelled me and really got me thinking about the fact that aerospace is what I wanted to do. So, and that was only, 2.5 years ago. So I highly recommend that to anyone in community college. And then if you're not in community college, there's the L-Space program, which I think you've had a session on before, and that's open to all college students. So actually, it's community college and four-year university students in the US. And L-Space currently actually has three sub programs. So I was only around for two of those, and one of them I mentioned earlier is the Proposal Writing Academy, but there's also a Mission Concept Academy where you get to write a full PDR, which is a preliminary design review for whatever project is assigned to you. And both of these are just fantastic opportunities to develop the soft skills that are so necessary to work in the aerospace industry. Because a lot of times you have really amazing engineers who are really fantastic with numbers and can come up with really great engineering technologies. And then when it comes to actually presenting that information, it's very difficult for them to get it across in a way that's understandable. And so they might not be as successful. So L-Space, I think, is a critical part of being successful in aerospace because it helps you bridge the gap between actual engineering and the English explaining and business side of it. So both of these, I think, were the only experience that I had when I applied for my Lockheed Martin internship. And I was actually offered the opportunity to apply through L-Space, which was really great for me, especially because normally when you try to apply to Lockheed Martin through the website, there's a very, very large applicant pool since it's open to everyone from anywhere. And the NASA L-Space applicant pool was very small relatively. So that was a really great way. So I highly recommend programs like this. L-Space has grown a lot since I applied for Lockheed Martin, but still I can guarantee you the applicant pool is much smaller than just trying to blindly apply through the Lockheed Martin website. And any other programs like this that you can find that have smaller applicant pools greatly increase your chances of getting noticed. So this is one of the biggest reasons I think that I was able to get into Lockheed Martin in the beginning. I had this very detailed 2-page resume, and you can see on the slide I said you should have a 1-page resume because that's something I did not know at the time. But any college student, if you're applying to a job in the commercial sector, it needs to be a 1-page resume. And so I put a picture of my resume here for you, just to show you kind of what I have found to be a successful rubric for a resume. So just make sure that you're highlighting all of your skills, that they're very transparent in the beginning, and that you're highlighting any relevant experience that you have, as well as some interesting, if you have space, interesting facts about you or your community involvement. So this will all be available for you to see later on, but this is just an example of what I've been able to get to at this point in terms of my resume. And then any relevant research or work experience that you can get. So this doesn't have to be aerospace specific, although obviously if that's possible, it's preferred. But any research you can do, paid or unpaid, will significantly increase your chances of meeting the requirements of these internship roles. And I'll get more into the requirements later. So be yourself when you're trying to get into these companies, but you need to edit yourself as well. Just make sure that, a lot of people don't know when to stop. And so they just like have so much information. That was me 2 years ago. My resume, like I said, was 2 pages long and it was totally disorganized. And I just wanted to give as much information like that I could. And that's great, but you have to try to find a way to boil it down into a professional package so that when you hand your resume to a recruiter, they can see everything that they need to see immediately and that they can place you faster than someone who takes 2 pages to get to the point. So next slide, please. Awesome. So I participated in 2 Lockheed Martin internships. So this is the first internship that I was given through the L-Space program. And so because it was through L-Space and not actually through Lockheed Martin, I was not a badged Lockheed Martin intern, which basically meant that I was working at Lockheed Martin campus for Lockheed Martin, although I wasn't getting paid by Lockheed Martin. And so basically the entire internship was like a huge interview for me to prove that I'm somebody who can actually get hired and paid by Lockheed Martin to continue. So I was lucky enough to work on the Lucy mission, which is what L-Space is funded by. And because of the C++ experience that I had gotten just from taking classes in community college, I was put onto the flight software team. So I was given the very unique and exciting opportunity to develop and test single fault tolerance flight software for the thermal module. So basically we had heaters on the Lucy probe and there was no fault tolerance, which means that if they failed, they just would never work. So my software basically made sure that if the heaters failed, there was a backup plan that the spacecraft could continue functioning. So I was able to implement over 200 lines of code and unit tests to protect the spacecraft from heater failure, as well as create requirements and multiple design artifacts for more systems applications, and then got a lot of experience using industry relevant software like IBM Rational Doors and Code Collaborator and Linux Red Hat Enterprise. Um, and ultimately, the outcome of that internship was just that I was able to gain a strong knowledge of what actually goes into developing these spacecraft and these products in such a large company. And I just wanted to emphasize, this is my first ever work experience. So I had no idea what was going to happen going into this internship. I just knew a little bit of C++ and knew that I was interested in aerospace, but I had no idea what was going to be expected of me. And in those 3 months, I just completely revolutionized the way I saw the industry and the way I saw actually going to work every day felt attainable because I knew exactly what they would ask me to do, and everything was very organized, and you just get such a good appreciation for these things. So I think Lockheed Martin is definitely the best place if you're interested in aerospace to get an internship, because you get exposed to every facet of the company and every facet of the project. And so you can see that here, they asked me to create requirements and design artifacts, which is using MS Office, PowerPoint and Excel and Word to actually take all of this code that is, gibberish, right? I mean, in terms of English, and then turning it into something that actually has to make sense in English. So I was able to correlate, the engineering with the English, like I was saying earlier. So I think Lockheed is a great place for that. And they really emphasize that systems thinking. So next slide, please. Awesome. And then so the second internship, so I was able to impress several managers through the course of my internship and just giving presentations about the work I was able to accomplish. So they asked me to come back as a full-time intern, which is like a badged intern. So this past summer, I went to a different project where I was working more on ASIC and FPGA design. And for those of you that don't know, ASICs and FPGAs are basically chips that you can find them anywhere in your phone, in your iPad, on, deep space spacecraft. And they're basically composed of hundreds of thousands of logic gates. So if you've ever taken a digital logic course, you know that this is an extremely powerful method of controlling anything electronic. So I was allowed to design and develop an IP core, which is just a is just a proprietary piece of hardware that combined these subarray controller ASICs, so several chips into one chip using another language, which is called VHDL. And VHDL is a hardware description language. So instead of writing software using a language like Java or C++, I was actually writing real hardware into this chip. So it was a really unique experience. I had never done anything in VHDL before. The only experience that I had relevant to this was a introductory digital logic class that I took in university. So I learned a tremendous amount of information about what goes into this during these 3 months of the internship. And so my chips specifically were implemented on electronically steered arrays, which is what this picture is generally showing, is antennas that we are able to design that are controlled by these digital chips. And so they're much more precise than the analog antennas that we used to use because everything was more mechanical. And as you know, with analog, there's a much wider range of probability and error versus digital. You have ones and zeros, so it's very precise steering. And so again, I was able to craft requirements and interface diagrams. And again, this is all systems engineering. And when I say systems, I'm talking more about the front end English side of engineering, which is the part that gets presented to the customer. So it's less technical and more broad and higher level. And so through this, I was able to save over $10 million for my program through the development of my chip and the implementation of my chip. I learned VHDL from scratch. Like I said, I had no background in it at all. So that was definitely a challenge, but now I know it. So that's a really useful tool. And I was able to interface with higher level engineers just coming into this internship with one more year of college under my belt. So by then I had finished my sophomore year of college. I was going into my junior year. So I was given more of a difficult task. And I was also given the opportunity to participate in tours across campus and intern-specific activities, which is another great thing about Lockheed Martin is that all the interns are always encouraged to just get together and participate in fun charity activities and volunteer activities and get to know each other because ultimately these are the people that you're going to be working with. So next slide, please. So I know that was a lot of information. So I wanted to just kind of break it down in terms of the differences of the internships so you can see what a college freshman internship looked like versus a college sophomore internship looked like. So with the Lucy Flight software, just to reiterate, I did not have any prior work experience. All the related experience I had was academic or extracurricular, and my internship was very heavily software based. You know, I was using Linux on a daily basis, and I was in a Linux environment working with C and C++ to write the actual implementation code and the unit tests for my module. And as I said, I was not a badged intern, so I had to really stand out versus, you know, it depends how you get hired into the company. You have to always stand out and you always want to make a good impression. But if you're getting in through, you know, kind of a back door like L-Space, it's definitely important to just make sure that you're putting your best foot forward at all times. So the first internship, the work was difficult but doable, and I think a lot of the reason of that was that just I was not high level in my college education, and so I had, you know, as always at Lockheed, you have a good manager who realizes where your strengths are, and so gives you something that's challenging but something you can accomplish. And I was in a small team with 17 other people who were not overly busy on the project I was on, so they were available to help me, which was fantastic. And so now, at the end of those 3 months, having interfaced with those people, you form very strong connections where these people remember you and they remember the quality of work you put through, and they'll be there to vouch for you in the future, regardless of if you choose to work for the company in the future. And then the second internship, I was incoming college junior, so I had more experience under my belt. I had the work experience. I'd worked with the company, so naturally they expected more of me. So the role was definitely more difficult. It was very challenging, especially because I had to learn VHDL completely from scratch, and it's not like any other language. It's just honestly not my favorite language. So it was definitely a challenge, but I was the reward was much higher, so with the first internship I was given a task that was expected that I could finish, but maybe not super quickly, and I was able to impress my manager by finishing it faster than he thought. But if I didn't get it done, it wasn't the end of the world. Versus the second internship, it was like, okay, if you can get this done, you're going to save the company $10 million, which is, I mean, a huge percentage of the budget that they have per year. And so if you don't get it done, it's okay, someone else will do it. But if you do, this is like big reward. And so by actually finishing it, I did get to leave a huge mark in my team. And that's the great thing about Lockheed is they really do trust their interns. They do screen you, and I'll talk more about how you get into the company and what can really set you apart from the competition. But when they do decide that you are someone that can work there, they are ready to give you difficult tasks because they expect that you can put your head down, you're a hardworking person, and you can make it happen. And when you do, it's the best feeling because you know that you really made an impact. You did something that would have taken 2 or 3 full-time engineers to do, and you actually made that mark. So it's a hugely rewarding internship experience. You never feel like you're like the coffee boy or something. You're always part of the team and you're always working. Even though with the second internship there were less people around to help me and they were extremely busy, I was able to get the help I needed to complete the task, again knowing nothing about it when I came in. So just goes to show, I guess, like the variety of the internships and just the reward that you get from participating in something like this. So next slide, please. Awesome. So these are the types of available internships that we have at Lockheed Martin Space. So we have many, many different fields of employment. Obviously, I work in engineering, and then there's HR, business development, supply management, and many more. So depending on what you're interested in, you don't have to be an engineer to work at Lockheed Martin. But if you are an engineer and you aren't really interested in engineering anymore and you decide that you're interested in business development, which is more like contracts and proposals, you can always switch to that. And so that's the great thing about Lockheed Martin is that we have such a diverse pool of talented people that if you want to do something with your career, the company supports you, the company is behind you. So there's a lot of room for career growth and also career diversity. So you can just change whatever. If you decide that you're not interested in something anymore, you can always over time switch over to a different department. But within engineering, Lockheed Martin is primarily looking for software engineers, systems engineers, and RF engineers. And so these are the three top positions. I know that Lockheed Martin is also currently looking for more business development interns and supply management interns. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, there are definitely opportunities going to be out there, at least in the next cycle. Lockheed Martin offers internships to all levels from high school to graduate school. So no matter what level of education you're in, it's possible to get an internship at Lockheed Martin. I will say that the high school internships are more delegated for, I guess, reserved for students who are closer to the campuses. So if you live in a city like Denver, or if you live in the suburbs around the Lockheed Martin campus, it's more likely to get hired as a high school intern. But for in terms of all the college internships, they'll hire from anywhere. We have, I think, we have interns from over 25 universities right now. So it's completely broad. You'll often work in a small team of 5 to 20 people in your internship, and you are, like I said, held to the standards of a full-time employee. Oftentimes, you'll be doing work that could have been done by, several other employees, obviously keeping in mind that, most employees work on several projects at a time, but the projects you're working on are meaningful, and you will be seriously helping your team no matter what level of internship you're at. And every internship ends with a performance review. So if you do well at your review, which is just based on your attitude and your tenacity over the internship, as well as the actual work you were able to put out and the quality of the work. So if you're over a certain level, over a certain number for your performance review, you'll be given immediately an offer to return for the next summer, and eventually that will end up in a full-time offer. So getting an internship with Lockheed Martin is, as long as you don't, like slack off or disappear or just do a really horrible job, which doesn't really happen. It's basically like you're going to get hired eventually. So it is really great. But again, that's why they're so selective, is because they know that once they have you there, they want to keep you. So it's really important to try to stand out in the hiring process for the internships, and also to try to find any side avenues that you can to get in and really prove yourself, like I did through LSpace. So next slide, please. So this is kind of just a graphic I made for the requirements for an interview. And this isn't exactly true, but this is generally what you need to keep in mind just to get into the interview at all. So typically for engineering, at least, Lockheed is looking for a 3.0 or higher GPA. This isn't always the case. Obviously, it comes down to your experience and your personality. So that's why I put the GPA at the top there. So there are cases where they've hired people with really, really great extracurriculars, but like a much lower GPA, because they realize that, not everyone is just like an A student. There's life happens, and it doesn't really define you or anything. But typically you want to be over that 3.0 range. And of course, you need to be an outgoing, adaptable, and hardworking person. It is very difficult to succeed in the interview if you don't have those qualities, because at the bottom of this graphic, you see that you go into what's called a STAR interview, which is purely based on your behavior and your ability to arise from challenges and solve problems. So if you're a person who just gets really defeated very easily when it comes to something difficult, it's going to be really hard to get past that interview, because they're going to be able to see it. Especially because the STAR interview, you can always look this up, and there are many lists on the internet of like typical questions that you can be asked in a STAR interview. And probably the most common question is, give us an example of a time where you had a challenge in a team and what you did to solve the challenge. And I can't tell you how many people I know where they're just like, they don't have an example, because every time they came into a problem with someone, they kind of just didn't want to deal with it. And that's exactly what you need to do, is deal with it. So embrace challenge, embrace difficulty. That's the only way you're going to be successful. And the reason why they ask you that is because, if this wasn't clear earlier, these internships are hard. I mean, they give you these tasks that when you come in there and they're like, we want you to do this and this, you're like, I don't know how to do that. Like, I don't have, an university level education in exactly how to solve this problem, and you never will. But the number one thing I've heard from these internships is that you go to college and you go to school to learn how to learn. And so if you're able to look at a difficult problem, and instead of just giving up because it looks hard, and actually saying, okay, I can do this, I can do research online, or I have my textbooks, or I can ask people, or I can just sit here and just try to reason it out. However you go about trying to solve this problem and actually solving the problem by the end of the internship, that's what makes you stand out. So and it's okay, if you're sitting here right now and you're like, oh gee, I've never like had an opportunity to like deal with someone, when we had a controversy, that's fine, I mean, but just make sure that you're always thinking about that, and always trying to find ways to solve problems instead of just letting them lie. And always, taking, for example, your next homework assignment might look really difficult, but don't go into it thinking, I can't do this, I don't know how to do this. Go into it thinking, okay, here are the resources that I have, and I can always look it up if I need to, or I have a friend I can consult, or just go into it positively and thinking that you can actually find a solution to the problem. That's what's going to get you at least into the interview, and hopefully past the interview as well. And then of course the experience that you have is crucial for getting into the interview, because that's the number one thing that the recruiters are going to be looking at, is your experience, the relevant experiences that you've had. Next slide, please. Awesome. So we just talked about getting experience. So how do you get experience? Um, Obviously, there's many avenues to go down, and that kind of seems overwhelming at times. And I know how that is. Like I said, I was in a lot of people's shoes. 2 years ago, I didn't have any work experience at all. I barely had like extracurriculars, and so I was really worried. When I applied for the internship, I didn't think I was going to get it. I didn't have that confidence. But these are just tried and true ways to get your resume boosted and to get yourself to a position where you're going to stand out to the recruiter. And so there's obviously many more things than this, but I just put the biggest ones that, at least for me, have worked. So if you can perform any research at your university of any kind, if it relates to your major or it relates obviously to aerospace would be great. Lockheed Martin sponsors a lot of universities, at least in Colorado and around the United States. So it's highly likely that Lockheed Martin has interacted with your university at some point. So if you just try to find out where and how, it's possible there could be a research avenue there. But any research is good research because it shows that you took it upon yourself to go and involve yourself in a professional environment and try to solve problems, again, technical problems. So that's a great opportunity if you can get it. Joining a club specifically says AIAA or IEEE for engineers specifically, or if you don't have any of these chapters, to start your own international chapter or national chapter is huge. Club involvement is probably one of the biggest things that I've heard from managers that they want to see, just because that is purely voluntary and something that you get involved in, not because you ever get credit for joining clubs. It's completely up to you to do that and to perform extracurricular activities there. So that's definitely a great way to go. If you can get an internship at a smaller engineering company or an aerospace company, maybe something more local to you, any work experience is good work experience, but relevant work experience is what's going to help you stand out. So if you had the choice between working at like a Denny's or like a very small engineering firm in your town, obviously you should pick the engineering firm, even if you're going to get paid less, because it is better to show that you're being involved in the field that you want to work in rather than just working anywhere. So, it's like I said, there's a huge applicant pool for Lockheed Martin internships. And so I think the majority of people who are interviewed either have a significant amount of extracurricular experience or have prior work experience with some company, because they want to know that you have already been kind of tested through this engineering process of trying to solve problems. And that's a great way for them to see what you've already been able to do and to prove. So these free NASA programs I mentioned earlier, NCAS for the community college, LSpace for all colleges, these are the links for these programs. And I think NCAS does their sessions twice a year, and LSpace will do it 3 times a year. So there's plenty of opportunities to do it if you have a particularly heavy semester or if you have a lighter semester. I don't think either of these are going to compromise your ability to continue with your semester. You get as much as you put into it, so in my case, I was only taking one class while I took the proposal writing academy, and that really benefited me because I was able to put a lot more time into my proposal. But there are many teams who have won who were taking like 16 credits and also doing NPWE, and were able to win. So it just comes down to the level of effort that you put in is what you're going to get out of these programs. Um, Also, if you can compete in NASA competitions, you don't have to be in a club necessarily. You can just get a group of friends who are all interested in participating in one of these. So there's many resources on these NASA competitions available online, as well as self-learning. So these are a couple sites that I've used before. Udemy has paid and free courses for literally anything ever. So you can find a course on systems engineering or a course on FPGA design, or literally anything is there. And then Udacity offers nano degrees, which are like 3 to 4 month programs where you complete a series of projects. And so you have a project portfolio at the end of these few months relating to whatever topic. So I participated in the Python nano degree program. So I was able to do several projects in terms of Python and then have a nice portfolio at the end of it that showcased my ability to use Python for a various degree of like numerical analysis and data analysis and stuff like that. So Udacity is a little expensive, but if you're taking like a gap year or something and you wanted to get some experience that is still paid, but obviously cheaper than college tuition, Udacity is a good choice. Next slide, please. Okay, so at this point, you're probably wondering, like, how do I apply to Lockheed Martin? So the best thing that I have right now, besides LSpace, which unfortunately, well, fortunately, Lucy is launching this October, actually, but unfortunately, that means I don't know what's going to happen in terms of the internships, because all of the internships at Lockheed Martin were for the Lucy mission. So I don't know what's going to happen this year with that, but I'm sure that just being a part of L-Space will open the doors to various other opportunities. I'm sure L-Space is going to continue for at least the next 5 years, if not longer. So I'm sure they're going to find another avenue to get internships available, because L-Space students are always, the most outgoing, because they really go for that extracurricular. They're really invested in the industry. But right now, the best thing I have is to apply online at lockheedmartinjobs.com. And, even if you're not going to apply right now, just to go on their website and to see what the different job specs are and what the different opportunities are. And it's always changing. So you just keep going and seeing what's there. And I highly recommend, when you do start applying, that you apply to as many roles as possible that you feel that you can perform well in, because it's more likely for you to get noticed if you're applying to like 5 or 10 positions rather than just one. So that's just a little tip, but many universities offer Lockheed Martin specific recruiting events. So just keep an eye out with your career center. If Lockheed Martin is coming to your school, probably virtually at this point, but still Lockheed Martin does do a lot of specific events for different colleges around the US. Get any related experience, obviously. So like I mentioned earlier, great opportunities are there for you, free and paid. Read the job spec on the website and make sure you echo the keywords in your resume. So if you see, for example, if there's a role that requires you to have two, I don't know, 2 years of like MATLAB experience, you want to make sure that that's in your resume, because if you know MATLAB and you like don't put it in your resume and that's for the job spec, I mean, it's like they're never going to know that you know MATLAB unless you tell them. So if you want, you can obviously make your resume look like my resume, where I literally give all of the skills that I have at the very top, so there's no ambiguity or anything. And then you can reinforce how you used MATLAB, either in courses that you've taken or in jobs that you've worked. Develop skills that you might not be learning in school. So a lot of times the curriculum differs between universities, and so you may not be learning something that's required the same way it is required in another school. But from reading all these recs on the Lockheed Martin Jobs website, you can put yourself in a position where you know exactly what they want you to be able to do. And so if you just take advantage of that and start learning those skills on your own, that will definitely help you stand out, because now you know something that probably 90% of other people in your major don't, because they don't teach it at your school and they didn't think to go learn it. So definitely try to see what is missing from the job spec and what you could learn. And like I said earlier, there's a lot of applications for one position, so sometimes over 5,000 for one position. So the key takeaway of that is not to give up or anything, but just to try to make the recruiter's life easier, because if you have a happy recruiter, there's potentially higher chance of getting put into the hiring manager's book of who they want to interview. And the way you can do that is by writing a very refined resume that echoes the keywords from the job specs that you want and shows them the skills that you have in a very clean and easy to read format, and has an emphatic cover letter that also reinforces the skills that you have that relate to what is asked from you. So yeah, again, don't take that as like a bad thing. Just take it as an opportunity to say, hey, well, I can make myself stand out by doing X, X, and X, like I've mentioned earlier. Awesome. So thank you so much for listening to this. Sorry, I hope I didn't talk everybody's ear off, but I really wish you guys good luck, and I'm open to any questions that you have now, or if you have questions in the future, feel free to reach out to me at either my LinkedIn or my personal email. I'm always here to help and excited to see, the people that come into the company. So thank you.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to say them out loud or type them in the chat and I can ask for you. I'll just start you off by asking two questions I had.
Sure.
So, one thing I had was, when are applications for Lockheed Martin summer internships due?
So the thing with Lockheed Martin is they typically start hiring for the next summer in the previous fall. So this is like a little late, I guess. There are still a lot of opportunities to apply, and that's just going to depend on the specific job posting. So if you're still interested in applying, just make sure you go to the website and read for the due date. And there are, sometimes little positions that get posted here and there. But if you're interested in working for the company and you want to apply the traditional way, the best way to do that is to try to find the recruitment events that are at your school. So a lot of times Lockheed Martin will come to your school once in the fall and once in the spring. So try going through that first. And then if you don't have that or you just really want to apply through the website, the best time to apply is in the fall that precedes the upcoming summer.
The other question I had for you is, are you aiming to apply to any other Lockheed Martin internships this summer, or have you already since they were already due?
Yeah, so actually that's something I didn't think to mention, but I don't know if this was clear or not, but after participating in my last internship, it was a great learning experience and I really appreciated everything I got to learn, but I didn't really enjoy it, like in terms of the work I was doing every day. So I actually just kind of cold called a manager who was working in systems engineering, which is something that I wanted to try since I hadn't done it before, and was able to get myself into a position on on the Dragonfly mission, which is really neat. So I'm going to be doing systems engineering for Dragonfly this summer. But that just goes to show also, just being there and you get so many more opportunities to connect with people, but it's only going to happen if you really push for it. And that's kind of what's great about this industry is like you have to be a doer and a go-getter, and then you will get what you want. You just have to put yourself out there, which is really cool. Yeah.
It looks like that's all our questions for you for today. So thank you so much for your time.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much.